Indie Radio presents The Spotlight, Internet Radio Show, Season 14. The program that puts the spotlight on independent content creators. Each week, our hosts bring to you entertaining and thought-provoking episodes. This is your home for news about television, film, gaming, and much, much more. Join us live here every Wednesday as we bring to you interviews and biting commentary. And now, your hosts, Jen and Kente. Hello, and welcome to an all-new episode of The Spotlight. I am one of your hosts, Kente, all the way live from Los Angeles, California, and I am so happy to be here with you. We have a wonderful episode for you tonight. This is episode number 257. All right, so joining me is my lovely co-host, the one and only Jen. How you doing, Jen?
Great. I'm so excited to have this special episode of The Spotlight. This is awesome. Not only are we ramping up for Halloween, the holiday, but ramping up for tomorrow's big festivities. I think that this is one of the best ideas that we've ever had for The Spotlight, just to be honest.
All right. I'm glad that you enjoy it. Also joining us is this guy is semi-hardcore. He's from Semi-Core Studios. It's the one and only Joshua Chitty.
You had to put my whole government name out there, didn't you?
I had to, man. I had to. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's been quite the wicked week in Florida. Maybe you heard there was a little storm that rolled through the western part of the state. Hurricane Michael. It was quite the thing to hear about. I'm lucky I didn't have any of the effects of it, but as we always say, thoughts and prayers to everyone affected.
Yeah, man. I did think about you during that whole time, man, and I'm glad to see that you came out okay.
So who in their right mind actually put Michael on the hurricane schedule for this late in the year? I mean, yeah, right. Clearly it's October. Clearly there should be nothing named Michael that has any devastating effects. We have seen what the devastating effects of Michael are. I just think that was poor oversight.
Yes. And I'm glad you didn't blow away, drown, or somebody break into your house and loot and do all this bad stuff to you. I thought about all those things. I was like, I hope Josh is okay.
Yeah, you could have found out if sent me a message. Said, hey,
I did. You didn't get that Raven?
Oh, was that from you?
Yeah, that was from me, man.
He probably thought it was a harbinger of death. You don't answer the Ravens. Good God.
He shot it and barbecued it. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you're here, Josh. All right. Now, joining us as well is the main man all the way from Canada. This is Mr. Cinema du Fromage himself, the one, the only, King Penguin. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks.
And he's reading a book.
Yeah, I read Garfield. Oh, sorry. I was actually doing a little bit of research. I was looking at my horror movie heroes book from.
Oh, okay. All right.
From the good folks at Rue Morgue magazine.
Love it. I love it. We're going to talk about, obviously, Halloween. I'm about to say 2000. 1970.
I'm out of here. Oh, sorry.
But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about Halloween, the holiday itself, and kind of talk about some of our memories of Halloween. And the first thing I wanted to I'm gonna start off with you, Jen, is when was the last time you went trick-or-treating as a child?
Oh boy. Well, you know what? Actually, I was sort of late in life. I think I went trick-or-treating the last time when I was like 18, but I had a younger sibling, so I always had an excuse. It was kind of, I have to dress up, I have to go get candy. I don't want my little brother to feel left out. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. What about you, Josh? When was the last time you went trick-or-treating?
Last year.
Ooh.
I'm talking about as a child, not with your kids.
Does man-child count?
In some states, that'll get you arrested now.
I've never missed a trick-or-treating year in my life.
So you just never stopped?
Never stopped. The way it worked out was much the same as, having a younger sibling. In Florida, by the time most people are in high school, they have kids. So I was able to go with friends and their kids.
Oh, sneaky.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
That's a good way to prolong the candy high, year to year.
Mm-hmm.
That's really smart.
Now, what about you, King Penguin?
Well, it's a sad story with me because basically they had just invented Halloween about 2 years before I was I had to officially stop. So I didn't get much candy then. No, I guess I trick-or-treated till I was about 13 or so, way back when. But to give you an idea, I trick-or-treated at the time when basically the costumes was a really shitty plastic mask, and you wore a crappy sort of plasticky thing that said what you were on it.
Right.
So you wore a Frankenstein mask and then a thing that said Frankenstein on it, so that everybody knew who you were. And it was a great way that we could all tell who each other was. We'd look and we'd read. And say, oh, that's Dracula. Okay, I get that. That's Harrison Ford. That's Han Solo. Okay, so I could tell the difference between the two just by what was written on their pullover or whatever it was called. It was made of that weird kind of. It was almost like a canvas, not canvas, but sort of like that blue plastic tarp you can get.
Yeah.
Right.
It's almost like that.
I every year from the time that I was probably maybe old enough to decide what kind of costume I wanted to wear on my own, that I didn't need my mom to go get for me, like maybe around 12, 13, I always tried to dress in like the most, what was the sexiest costume that I could possibly find out there. And
like
I feel like I was, but I feel like I was making up for all of the other nerdy, dorky choices that I made when I was a kid for Halloween. One year I went as a calculator. And I'm not kidding. I was dressed up in a giant box and I was a calculator. So yeah, I think as we get older, we definitely make strange, different choices. Do you make different choices now for your kids on Halloween based on how you used to dress?
Gosh.
I'm thinking, you know what? No, because they always pick whatever they want to be. I know one of them this year wants to be a YouTuber.
Oh, me.
Ooh, good one.
So, she wants a red jacket and a pair of headphones, possibly a keyboard, and a sticker that says YouTuber.
And she instead of saying trick or treat, she says.
Awesome.
So instead of trick or treat, she says like and subscribe.
Yes. She has this all planned out.
Oh, wow.
And the other two are right now kind of getting things figured out, kind of final planning, if you will, getting their costumes ready. Although they're not quite sure what they're going to be, but they're taking a look at what they have available and figuring out as they go along.
We always had the ultimate extremes. We've always had the Disney princess. Somebody's always a Disney princess. And then somebody was always the grossest, most disgusting thing that they could come up with. So the kids had lots of interesting ideas.
My youngest is making me very proud this year because I think she is going to try to be the Doctor.
Doctor Who?
Good for her.
Every time
Girl
we watch the new
power.
episodes,
Awesome.
before I'm allowed to press play because I watch a day behind on Amazon, she says, I have to go get my Sonic. So she goes.
Oh,
and
I'm so excited for her.
Screwdriver and we sit and watch
And
Doctor
how
Who.
is the new Doctor, by the way?
Brilliant.
Good. Okay. Good. So a fairly easy transition then.
Yes, very much so.
I haven't seen it yet, so
Okay, I will.
Don't spoil it.
Give some lines out, and all I'll say is, it's it's very new, but you still recognize where she came from.
Cool.
Okay. I don't know. Halloween for me, when I stopped trick or treating prematurely because there was that whole.
Oh, they got things for that now. Get that fixed.
There was this whole thing about razor blades and candy. And,
oh God, that old chestnut.
So,
that old chestnut. I did that back when I was a kid.
Yeah, my mother was like, no, you're not gonna get killed on some razor.
Oh boy,
no.
And I was like, I just wanted to trick or treat. Right? I was a little kid.
Yeah,
so I said, I won't even eat the candy. I just trick or treat, and then we could just throw it all in the trash. She was like, no.
Yeah, that's what you would have done. And then you would have been like found with your feet in the air in the trash, having dug out all the candy that you could get.
Right. So.
The single best reason to be a parent is Halloween, when you tell your kids that you'll give them the candy, over a period of time, and then basically just, take a bunch and tell them, oh yeah, that's all there is. It's great. It's really great.
That's terrible. Shame. Now, I make sure I get more candy than I know kids are coming, so that's where, and I make sure it's all the kind of candy I like. You can't trust other people not to give you like garbage candy,
This year, it's really hard to do Halloween because there is no way to do a low-carb Halloween. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, that'd be like a low-carb Christmas or Thanksgiving. You just don't bother.
It strains the imagination.
I want a gluten-free turkey and low-carb mashed potatoes.
I'm struggling.
It doesn't work. You just go, okay, I'm just going to have to lose it for that one day or two. Or a week, or whatever. It happens. But I mean, you saying that you lost your Halloween because your mother being afraid of like razor blades. I mean, I feel sorry for the kids who are being told oh, you can't do Halloween because it's satanic. Like, really? It's only about going around getting some free candy from people. I mean, okay, normally it's the only time of year you're allowed to go to a stranger's house and take the candy they give you. But it's not bad. I mean, how is that evil?
In Florida, certain parts of it, they say you can't celebrate Halloween because it's socialist.
Socialist? They're giving away free stuff from the haves to the have-nots.
Oh my God! Oh, that's just awful. Oh wow, that's really awful.
I want to take a moment to recognize Benjamin Tuttle. He's in the chat room. Hey Ben.
Oh man.
Yes. Ben Tuttle, great filmmaker.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah. All right. So we're done reminiscing on Halloween. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to review the film Halloween 1978.
And reminisce about Halloween. Let's reminisce about Halloween.
I know, reminisce about Halloween, right? So what I want to do is I have a little thing I cut together. I'm gonna play some of it that kind of give you the flavor of Halloween in case you haven't seen it. Believe it or not, there's people who said, I haven't seen that movie. I'm like, what? Like, to me, that's like a staple, right? Halloween. How do you not see Halloween and be like our age, right? But all right, so here's a little something, and hopefully for those who haven't seen it, that they will appreciate the film. All right, here we go.
Get to drop the key off at the Myers place.
I won't.
They're coming by to look at the house at 10:30. Be sure to leave it under the mat.
Where? Myers' house. Myers' house? You're not supposed to go up there.
Yes, I am.
That's spook house. Trick or treat!
Michael?
The only thing that ever bothers me is their gibberish. When they start raving on and on.
You haven't anything to worry about. He hasn't spoken a word in 15 years.
Since when did they let them wander around?
Are you all right? You're all right?
Yes, I'm okay.
He's gone. He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
Honey, you said never to go out there.
Judith Myers. He came home.
Boogeyman is coming. Leave me alone. He doesn't believe us. Don't you know what happens on Halloween?
If your precautions weren't strong enough, you should have told somebody.
I told everybody!
Nobody listened. There's nothing else I can do.
You can get back in there and get back on that telephone, tell him exactly who walked out of here last night, and tell him exactly where he's going.
Probably going.
I'm wasting my time.
Sam Haddonfield is 150 miles away from here. Now, for God's sakes, he can't drive a car.
He was doing very well last night. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
Speed kills!
Watching. Mr. Riddle is watching you, Lori. Mr. Riddle is 87. He can still watch. It's probably all he can do.
What happened?
What?
What happened?
Oh, somebody broke into the hardware store. Probably kids.
You blame everything on kids.
Well, now, all they took was some Halloween mask, rope, and a couple of knives. Who do you think it was?
It's hard growing up with a cynical father.
What is that? It's a dog. Still warm. He got hungry.
Lori, what's the boogeyman?
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Daddy? Was it the boogeyman? I'm scared.
There's nothing to be scared of.
Are you sure?
Get in there, come on, Tommy. Now lock the door.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
All right. That was Halloween 1978.
Almost all of it, too.
Pretty much, right. So, all right. So we're
No
gonna
surprises.
Yeah, we're gonna break it down. All right. So let's first start off by let's talk about the first time you were made aware of this movie. Did anyone see the movie in the theater?
No, I was only 8 years old, so I could not go see it in the theater.
All right. So I mean, it's been re-released many times and all of that. It was just actually it's re-released now. So all right.
But I did see it the first time they put it on television with the extra added bits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
That was 1980, I believe.
I saw it maybe 10 years ago in the theater. It was showing somewhere, and I made sure I went and saw it. It was in between the Rob Zombie movies, which we won't speak of. But I remember though actually, believe it or not, I saw the second one first. Then I saw the first one. I remember when I saw the second one, I saw it at my aunt and uncle's house. There was some kind of event over, and they were playing the second Halloween. And I remember it very well, vividly. I remember the end, when he gets shot in the eyes and the blood is coming out of his eyes and stuff like that. And then it was soon after that. I liked it so much, I went and somehow I saw the first one, the videotape or whatever. And I remember just, absolutely loving the film. So let's start with you, Jen. Do you remember the first time you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I when I was, I don't know how old I was, maybe 13, 14, we used to go to this local video store back when videotape was a thing. and each one of us could pick out a video. And every time I would always pick out something horror. And I had not seen Halloween up to that point. I didn't even know what it was, but I saw on the cover it wasn't what we see now. It was something a little bit different, and it looked just super interesting to me, and I had no idea what it was about. And when I got it home and started watching it, I have to say that this was the first, I felt like it was the first grown-up horror movie that I watched. Like, you have to actually kind of be invested a little bit in order to get to what's going on. And I felt so amazingly awesome after I watched it. Like, I was scared, but I also felt like, wow, I just witnessed something amazing. It felt life-changing to me.
All right. What about you, King? When was the first time you seen it?
Like I said, I saw it on television in 1980. So it was just before they'd released Halloween 2. So what they did was, as they always did with television, to pad running time, plus any edits that they had to do, because you don't show boobies on TV. What they did was they added extra scenes. And one of them is Dr. Loomis in basically a hearing, which kind of contradicts what he says in the film, where at 6 years old, he's trying to get him locked up, where it was like, well, I thought he said he'd spent 7 years trying to get to him and the rest trying to lock him up, but whatever. And then the whole thing with the sister, which tied into the second movie, which at first I thought, okay, that's how it was. Then I saw the film as it was supposed to be seen, and well, as best I could, home video on that at the time, and realized, okay, maybe it's not that way. And so, but yeah, it was creepy. The weird, ironic thing is that I'd seen the knockoff movie before I saw Halloween, which was Friday the 13th, which was cashing in on the whole Halloween thing. I saw that before I saw Halloween, so it was two different kind of films. Halloween's still much better, atmospheric and everything, and it wasn't about, you know, as far as, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but slasher films and everything, it really wasn't a slasher film. It was a suspenseful, interesting film that was kind of scary, kind of creepy. And I mean, when you got a body count of what, 4?
Right.
Total?
If you count the dog, 5.
Oh, okay, 5, right. I wasn't counting the guy lying in the bushes. That's all. I counted the dog, just not that guy. Who cares about the trucker guy?
I think that's what I mean about it. Felt like a grown-up horror movie. Like it wasn't the same kind of horror that I was used to, which is far more visceral and far more kind of in your face. This was definitely something that was more suspense, more thriller, more, wow, it took so long to get to where it needed to be. I think you hit it perfectly. It was more suspense thriller than horror.
Yeah. Which some people nowadays look at that as being a downfall of the film, which is a shame.
Yeah, like they say it's boring.
Yeah. Right. What about you, Josh? When was the first time you seen it?
The first time that I've seen the original Halloween, I was probably 13 or 14.
Oh,
so we're talking mid-90s. And by then, it already reached like legendary status as this is the premier horror movie, kind of like, you know, how there is this just ranking of Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, just late 70s, early 80s, just this upper echelon of what horror is supposed to be. And at that point, I'd already seen Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. So this I kind of watched out of order, you know, as far as release goes. So I was looking at it, already seeing what evolved from it.
Right.
So it was interesting. And maybe I didn't quite process it this way at the time, but it was interesting seeing how the origins of certain tropes started. And, you know, we all saw it. The Undertaker's sit-up gimmick, there's the origin right there, to bring it back to wrestling, like I always do. And as far as scary goes, I wasn't really scared when I saw it, probably because by that point I had seen scarier movies, but I do like the whole more adult horror way to put it, because it wasn't about body counts, it wasn't about blood and gore, it was about making you feel scared for a person, have an emotional attachment, and that is something that nobody seems to get in their horror anymore. An attachment.
Yeah, it's all
especially
people we don't care about.
Right. You're just like, how are they going to get ripped apart? Can't wait to see that.
This one died now. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you say adult, you say mature. You mean mature, not porn.
Man, little of column A, little of column B.
Hilarious. Let's talk about the opening, which is a very iconic now opening of little Mikey going crazy. Now, the funny thing is when he looks in the window and sees his sister's boyfriend, they go up for sex, and I swear they're up there for, and this is shot in real time, so they're up there. He is quick, man.
Yeah, it's realistic. It's realistic. I mean, this was the 60s, don't forget. So he got what he wanted and time to go. I mean, he probably didn't even have his pants off, but he was done. It's like, yeah, babe, gotta go see you tomorrow. Happy Halloween.
And I'm so glad I don't live in the 60s.
Right. I mean, he's up there, and then next thing you know, he's like, all right, well, I'm gone. I'm cracking up.
I think that's funny. I'm wondering why Michael decides while he's stabbing the girl to go take a look at his arm in the air.
Right.
Oh, look what I'm doing. Oh, boy. Or the family doing the tableau afterwards, like, Michael, stand. Don't move. Keep standing. I mean, great shot, but realistically, do something at one point. Maybe grab him or say something. No, we're just going to stare at him and not move. Stare at him. Maybe take a step backwards because I'm kind of in shock. But I'm not going to do anything.
You know, it's funny because, and don't get me wrong, okay, because I know that this could go in a number of different directions. But I don't see the original Halloween as any of the kind of movies that we have all talked about, especially us on some of our other shows before. It doesn't. The thing that I loved about Halloween, which I didn't recognize at the time because I didn't have the sophistication or the language to articulate it, is that every shot in Halloween has a particular purpose. And the beginning shot of Halloween sets up something that is deeper than I think it is possible to understand, obviously, when you first see it. And it takes several viewings of all of the shots together to come up with why that first scene is so important. I mean, obviously, there's lots of stuff to make fun of in it. But there are some really interesting points of view, camera points of view in Halloween. And this is one of them. This definitely, the camera is at his level. It is 100% a different kind of feel than the rest of the movie, which I think is important. And it plays this sort of it plays an interesting game with us at the very beginning where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You're sort of set off of the tilt that the rest of the movie kind of takes. I liked that, but it took me a long time to understand why I liked it. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Well, the thing was, you have to understand, the first shot was done as a single shot with a steady cam.
Right.
And they basically, and they made sure they rack focused as soon as his little arm went in, and it still didn't disguise the fact that's a little kid's hand reaching for that knife. But at weird angles from where his head would be, but that's okay. You can't. It's the best you're going to do with a low budget film.
Right.
Trying to get that illusion, but at the same time, it does a great job. And oddly enough, it is derivative because maybe 2 years or a year just prior to that, there's a weird horror film that was done where you saw the point of view of the killer and the victim shown at the same time as a split screen on the film.
Oh, that's right.
Called. It was a very not a good movie in any way, shape, or form, but that whole point of view thing was done prior to Halloween with that film. And I don't know if Carpenter saw that or not, But
Probably.
but at the same time, and every other film though basically took its cue. Every other horror film took its cue from Halloween.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the point of view of the killer, which is only done once, and that's at the beginning of the film. So they kind of missed what the whole thing was about.
That's what I feel like. That's exactly what I feel like. I feel like that very beginning shot is just sort of like it's an iconic piece that stands by itself, even in relationship to the rest of the film.
Oh yeah, like when I mock it, I only mock it only because it's when you look at the art of it, like it doesn't make sense in the realistic sense where Michael would look at his arm going up and down, and the family would stand in a tableau and everything. However, I mean, as it is, if you don't think about those things and you look at it, like the first time you see it or first few times you see it, you don't think about those kind of things. You just watch it and you're like, okay, this is really interesting, and it grabs you right from the start. And
clearly, I'm just defensive about my art. So it's just that.
Look, I'm sure even Carpenter would go, yeah, okay.
Remember, this is an entertainment show. No, but what's funny though is there. When they, when the sister and then the father calls out his name, it's almost like a Dennis the Menace type feel to it. Like, Michael! Like,
yeah.
Michael, what are you doing with that knife standing there?
It's almost like you need to...
And they got the steady cam behind you with the weird... that's the other thing. The mask thing didn't work for me on that, because I've been in masks. I know, you got a limited vision, but not everything else is black around you except for the two little eye holes, Because if you look at it, you got these two small little slits that you're seeing through. That's supposedly like looking through a mask. And it's like, that doesn't quite work because that's not what it looks like looking through a mask.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
It is if the mask's like this far away from your face.
Mm-hmm.
It's like about a mile from your face. You're okay. I can sort of see it.
It's supposed to be the
holding it in front of his face
of it, But so I love that opening, right? And if you know anything about the behind the scene thing, is that one of the ideas that this came from was that that when he was a child in Kentucky, or when he was in high school, I think it was, or maybe college, I can't remember, that he went to they went on a field trip to a sanitarium, which is hilarious. That that was a trip.
Wow.
And they had like this child.
Was it really hilarious?
Yeah, it's like I mean,
were they laughing that whole time?
I don't know if I would sign the field trip, the permission slip that was going to take my kid there. But
my parents would.
There, but for the grace of God, go I. Okay, sign it. There you go. No problem.
But when he went there was a child, a young kid who had the black eyes, like he talks, in the. And he said, so that's where he got the idea of this child killer from kid that he saw at the sanitarium. So on a field trip. So they used to do some funny field trips back in the day. But so I thought that was pretty interesting.
We're going to the plutonium plant. We're going to see how radioactive material is made. Come on, kids. You'll need a sweater.
Right.
I wonder, I often wonder these things. I wonder how the idea of seeing somebody in a sanitarium in whatever, I wonder how that actually became the Michael Myers that we see on the screen. I mean, it's one thing, I feel like, to say, well, this was the inspiration, but it's another thing to sort of like look at somebody who had an experience and then go, whoa, that was a crazy, messed up experience if that's what you walked away from it with.
Well, Carpenter said in his, somebody said the kid had this evil look to him. Like he had this, it wasn't like a blank stare. The kid had an evil expression and was apparently a very violent kid in that place. So basically, I can see where the imagination runs. Well, wow, dang. What would it be like if this guy was doing stuff? Hey, maybe if I made a movie about it. Imagine he grew up and go home.
He probably tells his friends at the sanitarium, like, Michael Myers is me.
It's based off of me. Oh, wow.
Probably
that's a claim to fame.
Hello, flesh puppet I made from my friend. It was me. Oh.
Okay, so let's talk about Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis, who I'm sure a lot of psychiatrists, they want to kill their patients. And he's like...
and refer to them as pure evil.
Right.
He was nothing more than pure evil. I looked at him and saw pure. That's very objective and scientific. Really.
He said he spent the first 8 years trying to reach him, and the last 7 years trying to keep him in.
Yes.
So, and apparently he was the only person that realized how evil he was.
Yes, because somebody trained him how to drive, apparently.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that in just a minute. But I'm gonna start off with you, Josh. What's your take on Dr. Loomis, the character?
He is a very dedicated doctor, very, very dedicated to the profession of psychiatry, and everyone should have someone as dead. Okay, the guy's not good at his job.
Not the slightest.
I mean, I don't want to be the guy that's like, all critical of someone and what they do, but he's terrible. Whether 8 years trying to reach someone, it's like, okay, that's what you're supposed to do, and then it's like 7 years trying to keep him in. Was it that hard the first 8 years to keep him in?
And was it his birthday? And he said, "You know what? That's it. I've had enough of you."
I want to see a video of that session where he's like, "Yeah, I'm done. Where's my bourbon?" That's he had on. I want to see.
Some of his thing, guilt, by the way, because he was his doctor. Like that was his job. You're supposed to reach a 6-year-old. Like a 6-year-old, you should be able to do something, right? With a 6-year-old, you had 15 years to do something, or at least you could have put a pillow over his head or something while he was at.
Show me in the doll where you stabbed your sister.
So, like, I mean, should we be blaming Loomis on the death count?
Should we blame him?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. He was his doctor, and then remember his boss. The boss was like, "You should have made sure that everything was lined up and all of this stuff." And he's like, "I tried to tell you, but no one listened to me." Like, why is no one listening to you?
No, he did take.
He's like, your patients are evil.
I was going to say he did take the necessary precautions by warning others and by giving him the totally legitimate diagnosis of evil.
Right.
Diagnosis of evil.
That's so bad.
I'm sorry, it's a terminal case of evil. We can't do anything about it.
Go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say that Dr. Loomis is one of the worst tropes to pull from the Halloween franchise ever is the psychiatrist that tries to be the threshold guardian, the warning light, well, we knew back when. It never works. It's not even funny. It's sad. It's so sad. Can you imagine being that doctor and not just spending your life chasing down these imaginary things, but being the doctor who basically your entire life is dedicated, like you said, to something that is quote unquote evil? I mean, it just, wow. It staggers my imagination to think that trope pulled out of the Halloween piece became something that everybody was like, oh yeah, this is so successful. Let's try to do it again. It was awful. It was just awful.
And it makes me think about Michael's time at the sanitarium. Like, I mean, he wasn't always like super locked up. So was he playing shuffleboard with the other inmates? Was he, was there moments of just being a normal person to a certain degree, or was he always just sitting, looking at the
well, that's the thing, Loomis. Here's the bizarre thing. So imagine, okay, so if you saw the extended version, it makes Loomis look even worse because but it does protect him in one way. He tells them, we got to lock this guy. We got to put him in a more secure place. And everyone's going, we don't have to do that. No, I've worked with him for 4 hours a day, every day now for the last 6 months, which I guess turned into 4 hours a day, every day for how many years now? 15, 16 years. So he's working with Michael, and he describes Michael as being catatonic, staring blankly. So how are those sessions going? 4 hours a day. What's your name? Are you evil? Are you good? How do you feel today? And Michael, what do you think we should do today? I'll give you a candy if you say something. Apparently he said nothing. So I don't know how he was trying to reach him. Maybe every day he was trying to trick him into talking or come up behind and go, boo, see if he'd get a reaction or something. But apparently all Michael was doing was staring through the walls, looking towards that day in 1978 when he was going to go home. Right. That's all he was looking towards, and that's all he did. So very strange story. If Michael just sat there, wonder how he got all that super strength. Don't know. How he learned how to drive? Apparently somebody taught him.
Okay, that's two issues too. Yes. Now I'm not going to mention the other sequels, but they're in the other sequels they kind of tried to answer how he was able to do all that, but we're gonna act like those don't exist.
No, let's. I'd say
because when they made this movie, that wasn't in their minds. That's some bullshit they came up with later. But so let's go to. Okay, first of all, he's been locked up since he was 6. And the way it looks like is there wasn't a student driver program in the sanitarium. Plus, it's like, why would
who qualifies? Well, let's take Michael Myers. He doesn't say or do anything. He'd be a good candidate to drive.
The line. I know why they put the line in there, but
because everyone's going, how the hell did he learn how to drive? Well, somebody must have taught him.
There's some dream lessons.
That somebody that taught him to drive made more breakthroughs than he did in 15 years.
You're right. Oh my God, you're right. It's like maybe that's how suddenly Mike and that idiot is the one who set him off. Like Michael was ready to sit there forever, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Hey, Michael, I can teach you to drive, but you got to talk to me a bit. No, you don't want. Well, at least react. Here's some keys. I'll teach you how to drive. What? You mean I could go places? All right, woohoo, murder spree. All right.
But also, though, not only did they teach him how to drive, they apparently taught him how to use a Thomas guide to find his home because they didn't have GPS back then. So
nope.
How the hell did he find how to get back home?
Well, I think it was just a straight road from the insane asylum to Haddonfield.
Right, it's just follow the
I mean, and it has stop-offs that everybody goes to, such as Dr. Loomis finding the one spot where the truck was pulled over, where the guy was killed,
right.
But it had a phone booth, so that explains it all.
Right. And then also, he was a busy beaver when he went back to Haddonfield.
Oh, yeah.
He not only did he find his old home, which I don't know how he would have found that, he also had time to go and steal which never made sense to me. He stole the tombstone of his sister that he killed. For what reason, by the way? And he kept it in the car, apparently.
Yes.
And then he had a time to eat a dog.
Yep.
Which is gross. And then
now hold on. With the right spices.
Herbs and spices.
Exactly.
And then he had enough time to go he went to 1 minute he's at the school where Jamie Lee Curtis is, and I'm assuming she's not the same age as Tommy. I mean, she's not in the same school as Tommy. So then so 1 minute
maybe they have the one school for the whole.
Oh, is that what it is?
What can I ask you guys a question?
Sure. Yeah.
As I'm listening to you talk, right? I mean, this is great, and I feel like I'm actually learning a whole lot because I didn't see the movie this way at all. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually really curious about whether or not you thought when you saw this movie for the first time that it was effective. Did you actually feel anything by it?
No, hold on. I have seen this movie.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hold on. What I was going to say is, excuse me, in subsequent viewings, because it's interesting the way that the evolution of how we think about things sort of comes to us all, right? And this is one of those movies that, to me, as time goes by, it actually gets better for me rather than worse.
Oh, yeah.
But I hear something different from you guys, which I am really curious about, which is it actually funny, or are you just making fun of it because there are like pieces that just don't make sense? I'm actually curious about that.
It is. It's funny when you think about it because it doesn't make any sense. But
when you're watching it, it's a different experience. Like I watched it last night and I enjoyed it, and I watch it once a year every year, and I do enjoy it. But when you if you see it enough times, like anything, sometimes the little threadbare spots start to show a little bit more because you've seen it 100 times. So you start looking at different things that you didn't look at before, and all of a sudden you notice things and go, well, that doesn't make sense. And if you think about it, but I mean, what Halloween is, I mean, let's get to the core of it. What Halloween is it's a fable story. It's basically it's Little Red Riding Hood told for adults, where you have the moral of the story is, that you got to watch out and always be aware of what's around you, or else, the big bad wolf is going to come and get you. I mean, that's the crux of it. That's why you have Michael Myers as this invincible boogeyman, and he's not really. I mean, let's face it. They call him Michael Myers, but let's face it. What is he called in the credits? He's the Shape, and that's all he is. He's the Shape. Yeah. He is the manifestation of, and as Loomis would say, evil and everything else. It is a low-budget film that did really well because it was shot well, it was edited well, it had great music, it had some good tension. So, I mean, it's a superior film for a low-budget film. But, once in a while, if you don't have fun with the flaws of it, if you take it like too seriously, then you it's like all projects. Sometimes you're going to have little flaws, and sometimes they become bigger flaws when you think about it. And so you can have some fun with it. But I'll say when I watch it, no, I enjoy it when I'm watching it. I don't sit there and go, oh, this is terrible, or this is a dumb film, or this is goofy. But after I finish watching it, once in a while I'll go, yeah, that still doesn't make sense. Or, that's kind of, they're playing this, the time doesn't make any sense. For example, Loomis suddenly spotting after being all night sitting there at the house, at the end of the movie, looks over and sees the car that looks like it's only like a block or so away, and he notices it after an entire night of being out.
And how did he get there?
All that stuff. It's like, okay, that's that's cheap. Those are cheap little plot devices to keep the movie going. Oh, he notices, now he can get over there and help these people. And it's like, okay, that's you can see that being a little bit of artifice, but it's okay. It's a fairy tale, basically. Oh, scary fable. And so, yeah, it's going to have some stuff that's a little magical and a little bit odd, but that's okay.
It reminds me of like the first time that, not to compare the two, because I don't think that there is a direct, it's not like you can compare them, but I'm just going to compare the feeling that I had, right? I was obviously much older when I saw the Psycho as a film, and I had not understood Hitchcock before I had seen Psycho. I didn't get it. I didn't even understand what people were excited about with it. And after I saw it, I got it. And that's how I feel about Halloween. But what is interesting to me about this is that there are as many different ideas about how to enjoy this film as there are audience participants. And maybe that's the same with a lot of movies, but this one in particular feels a little bit different. I think because it's sort of like in our social blueprint, because we excuse me, because we think about it so often, especially at this time of year, and it has become so iconic that like everybody kind of has a slightly different take on it. And until I heard you guys talking just now, I hadn't really thought about this as like one of our cinema du fromage movies where there were like all of these pieces to kind of pick apart. I honestly hadn't thought about it that way. And so that was the reason behind the question.
Yeah, I don't think any film is immune from that kind of criticism. There's very few films out there that are like, oh, this is ultimate perfection and cannot be touched with criticism. But I mean, every film.
No, but you will admit that there are some movies that are more cheesy than others.
Oh yeah. Now, overall, I'd say Halloween is still a great film and a great horror. It's not, a great suspense film. Because I was going to say, if you look at horror films of the 70s, right, there was quite a lot of good ones. Exorcist is one. I never found that scary or anything, but the one that always disturbed me, and I watched that as well this week, just to sort of get a thing, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, which is just a hell of a disturbing, weird film. It's another case of a independent film being thrown together, and almost you could say, well, why didn't this start off the slasher craze as opposed to Halloween? Aside from the fact that Halloween made a lot of money, which was that was the key thing. I mean, Halloween was, until Blair Witch, was the highest grossing film as far as to budget of any film of its time.
Right. Independent, yeah. Okay, so let's get back into the reviewing of the movie. All right, so we talked about Dr. Loomis and his psychiatry or lack there. Let's talk about Laurie Strode, the main character. Jamie Lee Curtis, which I believe this was her first theatrical.
Yeah, that was her first film.
Yes, and so Laurie Strode, the character who is the classic. She's a virginal character. She has a little secret crush on Ben Tramer. She's trying to, her friends are having sex and doing all these things, which ultimately ends up in their demise. And she's the one that, in the end, is the strong one that holds through. And Jamie Lee Curtis became the Scream Queen after this film, or known as that. So let's start off. You know what? Since you are a lady, Jen, let's start off with you. What do you think about the Laurie Strode character in this film?
Well, going back again to the idea of this was the grown-up idea. This is the first time that I had ever seen a movie where I understood what you just talked about, what that really kind of was. That she was not as much in peril, hunted, but not as much in peril as all the other characters, because they were not off color, but clearly they were doing things that were too quote unquote distracting. They were participating in things that you shouldn't. They weren't. She was the nice girl, and I'd never even thought about that before. I liked Jamie Lee Curtis in this, but for reasons that were not, I don't think, the normal reasons. I liked her because I feel like she was so, like, this probably wasn't the right role for her to be in, and somehow she made it work. Like there's something just sort of just off about the way that she's portraying things that ultimately works in the movie, but it feels like, if you look at this from outside, maybe this wasn't the part that she necessarily was thinking that she could get. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Oh, no, definitely, yes. Yeah.
It just definitely felt like she was like, oh yeah, no, see, I should play this role. I should be a different role. And instead she got this role. And the way that it gets portrayed is like so perfect because it almost feels awkward.
Yeah, she said at the time.
So in that sense, I really liked it.
She said at the time she was more like the other two ladies.
Oh, see?
And she actually was a little jealous of them because she actually liked their parts, and they were like, "You're the lead." Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're jealous of you, right? So, but which is kind of
she wasn't very happy with her performance near the end of the film. Like she said, she did not like the way she was whimpering and whining and crying. She said she did not like that as far as.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I liked it. So we're gonna go back to Laurie Strode, but I want to go to Josh. Let's talk about the other two ladies who were friends of Laurie Strode.
I mean, what's there to talk about? They had as much depth as a kiddie pool, didn't they? They were there to strip down and get killed.
Yeah.
So
strip down and get killed. That's
totally.
They were good at their jobs, I guess. They certainly did those two things. And as far as the character goes, maybe, yeah, they were horny teenagers. So they had that going for them, I guess, before their untimely demise.
I feel like those two characters were actually there to basically make Jamie Lee Curtis's character be what she was. In other words, like, we couldn't have seen how much of the virginal kind of aspect that she was supposed to embody, the innocent of the aspect, I guess, without them. It wouldn't have been the same, because there wouldn't be the same kind of contrast.
She's basically saying you needed two hoes to make Laurie look virginal, is what she's saying.
Kind of.
Laurie was the picture of virtue in this, and in fact, confession, I've only seen 2 Halloween movies.
Okay.
This one and Halloween H2O.
All right.
So I don't know if this was actually a thing that was explained, but if I had to throw in something to the lore, it would be that somewhere along the line, since Michael is the evil person, I would have it somewhere that she was imbued with some sort of virtue protection, because, like you said, she was hunted but never really in peril. In fact, at the most dangerous of times, she is so freaking virtuous that she's telling the kids to run and hide and lock yourselves away. It's like she probably would have been willing to sacrifice herself to save those kids.
Which, honestly, if you think about it, he's right around the corner. You're literally telling him where they're hiding it. Like, she says it all loud, like, you know. So
yeah, that's some third viewing stuff right there.
That's what I thought when I saw it. She's all like, hide in this room right here. I'm gonna lock the door. Like, almost like she's guiding him. Maybe she was guiding them to them. So
she's like, if he gets them, he won't mess with me.
Right.
Well, she was dumb enough to leave the knife downstairs the first time. Did she really think the knitting needle was going to do him in? Really?
Yes. All right. So let's talk about.
Hold on. I have my 2 cents to put into this.
Oh, go ahead.
I the whole thing with Laurie is everyone said, "Oh yeah, she's virtuous." She says, I said, the only thing she had above the other 2 characters, and I have to say, being a child of the 70s, the one thing I have to say, what sounds like odd speech was pretty realistic for the time.
Totally.
I hung around teenagers at that time. That's how they talked. So I would say that those 2 girls were pretty much bang on, and they actually sounded like real people at the time, and that's what made them sort of likable. I think the difference between Laurie and the 2 girls was the idea of her having responsibility. It's not about her being a virgin. Everyone's like latched onto that one thing. Oh, she's a virgin. They're virgin. No, she was responsible. You look at it. What happened? Her friend.
That's such a good point.
Her friend was basically saying, I want my boyfriend to come over. Here, you look after this girl I'm supposed to be responsible for so I can go off and do whatever I'm doing. She's the one who's irresponsible. She invites her friends over. They come in and they use a parent's bedroom. The whole time, Laurie is being responsible. She's looking after the kids. She's doing what she's supposed to do. What they always mock her for being, so responsible and everything. But she's not perfect, because when they're driving to go to the job, what do? They're smoking a joint in that car. That's not a cigarette. They're smoking a joint in the car. She's smoking a joint as well. So she's not pure and innocent. However, she does play the part. Like I said, it's almost like a Red Riding Hood story. So the responsible girl kind of goes a little bit astray. They're into a very dangerous situation, but her being responsible, her being pragmatic and doing what she's got to do, she gets through with the help of the woodsman who happens to be Loomis, who comes in with the gun, and saves her at the last minute. And so what's the danger? I don't know. The danger was in letting the doors be open, going over to the other house, or allowing her friends to be, maybe it's a 3 Pigs story in the other way. But it's like the irresponsible teenagers who are being a little more free and open. They're the ones who die. It's not because they're having sex, but it's because they're being irresponsible. They're leaving doors open. They're using somebody else's house as their own. Nobody knows where anyone is, and so there's no one to check up on them. They take phones off the hook when the parents are calling in, or I mean, that's who I'm assuming is calling all the time while the two are having sex upstairs.
In their bed. How gross.
Yeah, in their bed. Yeah. So I think it's more of a case of Laurie being responsible as opposed to being virginal. The virginal thing, I think everyone latched onto afterwards. Oh, this is the thing. And everyone did it afterwards, that it had to be the pure girl. So every repeat that we've seen ever since, the faded carbon copy of the original has turned it into, being virginal is this key to surviving. Where it wasn't Laurie being virginal, she was responsible. Right. She and that's the way her character was. She balanced. She wanted to be more like her friends and have fun and do kind of things. But at the same time, she had this little streak of, no, I've got to do what's right, what's responsible.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, that's my point.
And who keeps a lit jack-o'-lantern next to their bed? Probably Jen. Probably.
I definitely do. That's my big thing, actually. Yes.
All right, so let's talk about Michael. Michael pre-murder spree. Michael
pre-murder spree.
You're right. Michael is, as I mentioned earlier, he's doing a lot of stuff. I guess he had 15 years to think about this. So he's like, I guess he probably had an itemized list. Like, I'm gonna go get me a
list. Break out inmates, steal a car, grab overalls, get a mask, get a knife, kill everyone.
Like he really had time to think about.
Eat dog. Oh, sorry.
You get some dog. He doesn't like dogs either. Unless
two of them.
Yeah, but so Michael, he's very sinister, and it's the imagery is so the him behind the hedge is great. Him, the clothing line. It's just those shots are wonderful. They look great.
That's the spookiest part of the movie, and I think, in the most part, is that where he's stalking her in the broad daylight and stalking everyone.
Yeah, in broad daylight.
And it's like him just standing there and then disappearing. That was a great shot. Those are the parts of the movie that I loved. I thought, okay, that's creeping me out,
And I'm at to point something else out that Jen ain't gonna like, but the person that taught him how to drive and how to read the Thomas guide should have taught him how to tail a car. I mean, he was like right up on their bumper, like following them. I guess that joint was good because they did not notice he followed.
For just a brief moment.
We've got to find him. He drives right behind him. It's like, which way am I looking now? Look left, look right. Oh, missed the car.
I swear, Kente, for just a brief moment, I thought for sure that you were going to say that some actor that I like taught him how to drive. I absolutely believed that you were going to say it was probably Zach McGowan that taught him how to drive.
Probably.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
But
anyway.
I thought that it's just so funny when you see like he's what's the protocol for following someone, Josh? Is like you're supposed to be 2 cars back to the left or something like that. I saw it in some movie, something like that. He's definitely not following that protocol. He's like, all right, up on the bumper. Like,
he is crazy, remember?
That is true. He's crazy.
And he did have a lack of spy movies to watch while he was.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, he was only looking through a wall that entire 15 years, remember?
Well, what about when he was doing his driving lessons?
He was still looking through that wall. 15 years from now, 14 years. I know where I'm going to be. 13. I got a plan. I've got my plans. I've got it all written down. I'm going to be. Go home,
do you guys think that at this point in the Halloween, I mean, in the very beginning, do you guys think at all? I haven't heard the commentary. I wish that I had, because I feel like it would have been great to walk into this podcast for. But do you think that there was any idea at all of sort of like a Michael Myers mythology behind this, or do you think it was just sort of
it was a cheapy film they were making,
idea?
It was a cheapy film they were making that had the blessings of the fact that it was a good director, an excellent cinematographer. That's the one thing that's not talked about enough, is the cinematography of this film is amazing. The shots, if you think about
music.
Yeah, and the music. But I mean, you think of the shot of him coming down the stairwell and the way the shadows are all cast, with him standing down and coming down that stairwell, or when he appears out of the darkness, the mask comes out through the darkness when Laurie's standing there.
Brilliant.
Just brilliant. Like, this film is a beautiful thing. The only thing that bugs me about this film is it's October 31st and it's green. It is so green. It is summer green. It's California green, which is odd for Chicago, or the Illinois area, but it was filmed in California.
It actually was filmed in Pasadena, and then about 10 minutes from me is So,
but that's the thing. So, I mean, that's the only thing. So you see the brown leaves everywhere, and then the foliage trees and the very green grass. And going, I have to always try to ignore that when I'm watching the film because that's not what Halloween looks like. Now, apparently, though, the original film was color corrected in such a way that the leaves did look a little browner and everything. So it's the recent DVDs and the high definition stuff. They're not, the color timing's off, so you're not getting that look that it should have.
Now let's talk about the kills too. The kills in the movie. The kills were pretty good especially for that time. One thing is Michael loves to tease, because remember he was 6 years old when he went in, so it's like he's like kind of teasing, taunting before he kills him first, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's where the gravestone comes in. I think it's, if you look at it, it's a kid playing Halloween tricks that happen to be deadly, but it's all about he's wearing the ghost costume, he's popping up out of the doorway, he's always coming in and looking in a certain place and disappearing at the last minute when you look around. He's trying to play Halloween tricks on them.
He's a ninja.
The eventual treat of killing them, but you know.
Right. He's a ninja. I love though when the first girl he kills in the car, and how her eyes go cross-eyed when he kills her.
He slashes her. It's the thing you can't tell because he's so. And that's the thing. What do? He soaped the windows, right? A Halloween prank. He actually slashes her throat because you only see it later when you see her lying there that her throat's been slashed. And that it's hard to tell, except for that sudden sting that they put in. You go, why'd they do that? Okay, but you know, people who die don't have the most refined expressions on their faces. In real life, so.
That and using the toilet.
Yes, like Elvis.
Right.
He did both. He used the toilet and died.
Right. Eating a peanut butter and.
No, he was trying to get rid of the peanut butter nana sandwich.
That's what it was. Okay, so. And then, you know, everybody's favorite, one of the best scenes is when he kills the guy with the butcher knife.
Yes.
And then, you know, and he admires his work. I love that. That was like such a brilliant touch to it.
And
yeah, I like that too.
Like that scene too a few times. I've seen Jason even do the same thing where he tilts his head and cocks it. Jason lives once again.
He's like, you can't tell me I ain't with this knife.
But there you go. So here you go. I mean, if you look at him in the film, he's not a big guy. He's like, 5 foot nothing guy, probably about 180 pounds. Yet he's able to lift this guy up, off his feet, and then jab a knife into him and hold him in place, and so he can let go and just like. So obviously, he is a supernatural force, is what he is. It's not what he, it's not supposed to be realistic, and that's the thing. He does supernatural things. He can come and go at will. He can disappear.
That is okay. So that is exactly what I was trying to say about, was there any kind of mythology behind this? I think that's what I was trying to get at. What I was trying to get at was this just the story of just sort of a guy who breaks out of the penitentiary?
No, like I said, I think it's like a fable, a fairy tale, and he's like I said, they call him the Shape, right, in the credits. And there's a reason they call him the Shape. They don't say it's Michael Myers, the killer, because he is, in many ways, a supernatural being in some ways. I mean, let's face it, they kill him over and over again. And he keeps getting back up again. So it's not like he's, a realistic portrayal of a serial killer. He's a force of nature, in a way. He's come to town, everyone's lined up, as the sheriff says, you're saying we're all lined up for a slaughter, and that's the kind of idea that he's some sort of force of nature that comes into the town, creates mayhem, and then disappears with the season.
Right.
Like a hurricane.
Yeah. Josh is like, don't mention hurricane.
Sorry.
Too soon.
There's something so interesting about the actual timing in this movie too, because just as long as we've been talking about each of these individual scenes and all of the individual pieces that have gone through, in my head, I'm still remembering how sort of unpredictable the actual timing is in Halloween, in that there isn't even a set feeling of where I would anticipate like a jump scare or something. It always feels. I see why he was saying that the robot from Westworld was kind of like, an odd inspiration for Michael Myers, in the sense that, just keep going, keep going, keep going. Because the pacing in this movie feels like that's what's happening. It's just a keep going, keep going, keep going. And along the timeline, people die. But there's no sense of kind of, well, now we know that this person's going to die because here this happened next, or this happened before, or whatever. And to me, that's really different.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is where the sequels kind of ruin everything a little bit by creating the whole legend that Laurie is Michael's lost sister. Because if you look at the original film as it is, there's no hint of that whatsoever. That's like stuff that was dumped in later. Then it becomes sort of this, these people just happen to be in the way of this person and happen to catch his eye. And it was nothing that they did. It was just happened to be that they were there when he spotted them, and it caught his eye, and he decided to follow them and latch onto that group of people. And it's only because Laurie walked up to the Myers house to drop off the key. And what was the kid's name again? Oh, it was Billy, Jason, whatever his name is. Tommy. Yeah, Tommy was with her. So who are the two people that he goes and stalks? Tommy and her. Right?
Right.
And when her friends, taunt him when he's driving by, then suddenly they're on his radar. And it's sort of like just a happenstance. It's like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to get my sister and kill her, and that's why I've got to do this. Because that in itself is kind of a silly kind of add-on they put into it. And I think with her being just a babysitter that happened to drop the keys off in the house that he was in at the time, and then everything kind of falls after that, it's a more effective kind of story.
Because it's odd, because when I ask about mythology, it actually works when it's so much more nebulous, and I feel like that's really that it feels strange to say that, but the more nebulous the story is, the better it works.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's like the more they try to explain Michael Myers and who he is and what he's about and everything, the worse the films get. I mean, let's face it, the last two of the original run were terrible because they were trying to explain Michael Myers and who he is and, this group that he's with and this is why he's this way. And it's like, don't explain it. But he's, like I said, he's a force of nature, and that's it. You leave it at that. The second you try to explain him, like Rob Zombie tried to do by saying he was part of this white trash family that became a psychopath because of, you don't need that. And that actually takes away the power of what he is. He's supposed to be just some supernatural force that you cannot compromise with, you can deal with, you can't understand. It just happens.
Yeah, it just is.
That's what makes
it's like a force of nature.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it effective in this film, because there is no reasoning, there is no anything. You can't communicate with them, as the doctor points out right away. It's like, he tried to reach him for 6 years and everything. We were mocking that before, but the fact is, you can't reach this person. He doesn't exist as a person. He is just a personification of evil that is going to strike at any time and does.
We were talking about how great the cinematography is.
Yes.
And I didn't realize this. This same cinematographer worked on The Fog, Escape from New York, Halloween 2, The Thing, Halloween 3, Season of the Witches. He was the cinematographer for Romancing the Stone. Yep. The Back to the Future trilogy did all of those. Roger Rabbit, Big
Jurassic
Trouble in China, and Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And Apollo 13. But unfortunately, he also was the cinematographer for DC Cab. So can't win them all.
Yeah, well, you can't win. You can't pick every winner. It's a job. Right? Hey, we got this job for you. Mr. T's in it. Mr. T. Oh, I'm in. You didn't think I knew it.
He's like, I got was right. I got paid. So let's let's get to the conclusion of the film. All her friends have been killed. She has the weird phone call where Michael's listening, which is hilarious, where he's like, on the phone. And so she decides to, because the kids are asleep now, to walk on over to the house. And
did not turn on any lights.
Yeah, I was like, man, I'd have been turning on.
At least have her like flip the switch and say, "Oh, it doesn't work." Okay.
She's obviously nervous, right? You could tell by her. So she doesn't turn on the lights. Okay. And then she walks in, and then she discovers, the scene. And then Michael, who was really good with his knife, gets really silly with his knife, and misses her, and she, does her tumble. And so that's when we start with the end. And so I love the final sequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very well done.
Excellent.
It's excellent. I love the knitting needle to the neck, and I love how when he pulls it out, he just.
I love that.
I love it. It's a great scene. How he just, the minute he pulls it out, he just,
like he deflated or something.
Right.
Oh, it was just a balloon. You kids.
My favorite scene though in Halloween is when she's hiding in the closet, and I use that as the picture for the promotion, and I had the little video clip. Is he's breaking through the thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then the light is out, right? He takes the time to turn on the light, sees that she's there, and then he turns it back off. I just think
it's great because it looks amazing.
It is great.
You get a good view of him for a few seconds there, and then it's like,
yeah. And he's like
Shatner. Oh.
And then he's stabbed in the eye, and then stabbed in his neck or whatever. So okay, so the good doctor finally is able to put. What did he put? I put 6 shots in him. Right.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, he put 6 shots.
Well, that's Halloween 2 where he says that. So talk about that film.
That's right.
He just shoots him, and then she says, "Now, what is her line exactly?" Did she say it was the boogeyman?
Was that the boogeyman? And
I don't think that's the exact line. I always thought it was that the boogeyman, but I don't think that's what
something boogeyman. And
then, it was the boogeyman. As a matter of fact, it was, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That ending is so perfect.
Oh yeah, well, where you see all of the places that he'd been through the movie, and you're hearing him breathing through the whole thing. So it's like, yeah, and like I said, once again, he's a supernatural force. He's everywhere now. He's in all these places. He's not an actual corporeal thing. He's just the evil that's in that town.
Now, here's my thing, right, about that ending. That ending is absolutely perfect. If there was never a sequel to that film, and that was the final thing we ever had with Halloween, I think the movie would even be more exalted, because I think that's unfortunately, and I've talked about this with Jen, when there's a bunch of bad sequels to a good movie, people forget sometimes how great the first one is. I think for a minute, people
they keep adding more and more detail that's not necessary. But like, I'll put the idea of Aliens to Alien.
Right.
A lot of people love Aliens.
Yeah, I like it.
Good movie. I'm not saying it's not, but it kind of makes Alien lesser, because all of a sudden you're not killing just one, you're killing 100 and everything. All of a sudden that threat of the one alien and the crew suddenly seems lesser for some reason. And it's like once you heap more and more things onto it, it suddenly takes away from the original.
That's not always the case though. There are some stories that work better when the oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. When the unfolding mythology of the world continues, it can get better. There are some instances where it works, but in this particular instance, and I think that this is maybe one of the weirdest issues that I have with the horror genre in general. It's not always that telling more of the story is better. Sometimes in horror, the things that we should be afraid of are just nebulous things that exist. And part of the reason that we can be so afraid of them is because we have no explanation for them. So the more that you can see on film that there is no good explanation for why these things happen, they just happen, the scarier it is. The more you try to drill down into the detail, it's sort of like it takes, like you said, although you can fight me about aliens, but there is this sense of the things that make us afraid are supposed to be scary because we don't understand them. Not because we do understand them. If we understood them, then they'd be science. They'd stop being the superstitious, scary stuff that's all around us.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, also, I'd say the like, if you want to talk about how good this film was compared to its sequels, this film was very bloodless. You know, in many ways, there was a couple of scenes where you see a little bit of blood, but on the whole, there's not much. It's all left to the imagination, and that's what makes it better. It's like, if I want to go back to where I was talking about Texas Chainsaw, that was another film where it wasn't a gory film. Everyone thought it was gory. I mean, it had this title that immediately, you know, set alarm bells in your head. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, oh my God, what the hell are we watching? There's a couple of scenes that are suggestive, but you never see anything. You really, aside from one little bit, you never really see anything. And it allowed your brain to fill in all the gaps that made everything worse.
Yeah.
The second you start, like, Halloween 2 was originally supposed to be more similar to Halloween, but Friday the 13th came out and all the other stuff, and everyone went to Carpenter and said, yeah, we need you to reshoot some scenes because we need more blood and we need more, you know, this and this and this. You know, we need more TNA, we need more blood and everything, gore. So he had to reshoot a bunch of scenes in the hospital, which just made it a worse film. Like, you look at the two and it's like, you can see, here's Halloween and here's the movie that's post-Halloween, that's its actual sequel, and has been affected by the power of the original, and it became a crappy carbon copy. And each film thereafter got worse and worse. I mean, I'm sorry, in a way, Halloween 3 was sort of a good idea. It's like, let's just walk away from the Michael Myers thing. Let's try to do different horror stories in the Halloween theme. But everyone said, no, we want to see the same stuff over and over again, but add a little bit more whatever to it. And each film was a lesser version. And like, I love the original. It doesn't have a high body count, it doesn't have gore, but it's got suspense, it's got a good story, it's got, you know, the acting's not 100%, but I'll tell you, all the characters are likable to a degree. So that, you know, you're not sitting there waiting for each to die and going, I can't wait till this one dies. Which one of these horrible people is going to go? Which nowadays, every horror film is just a bunch of horrible people that you don't care about and you can't wait to see get snuffed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when you're sort of like rooting for the killer, you're kind of going, okay, you're in a bad spot. And that also happened with the Halloween franchise. Suddenly, Michael Myers stops being the scary boogeyman and is the guy you're waiting. Oh, who's he going to kill next? And how's he going to kill him? And it's like, really, wasn't the point of the original.
Well, let me ask a weird question. I'm gonna start off with Josh, and then I'm gonna end it with King. This is gonna be a kind of a strange question. You ready for it?
Yeah.
After seeing Halloween 1978, is there a part of you that is the slight bit sad for Michael, being that he was a kid that went through some tough times, and then he had this terrible, affliction that led him to kill? Is there a little bit where you're actually sympathetic towards Michael?
Am I sympathetic towards Michael Myers? No, not even a little bit, because as the good doctor mentioned, he has a full case of terminal evil, and that garners no sympathy.
But it wasn't like he asked for it. He wasn't.
We don't know that.
Before he came down from heaven, he wasn't in the evil line. Like, let me get a little extra evil as I come to earth, right?
They didn't show that. We don't know if that's the case.
He was afflicted by evil. Maybe he needed a priest instead of a psychiatrist.
So you're saying what we should have had was a Halloween Exorcist crossover movie?
Right.
I was just going to say that.
We wouldn't have had the Halloween movie if the Exorcist part happened, though.
Like think about it. He killed his sister, right? That's terrible, right?
Yeah.
But the system failed him. Think about it. The system kind of failed him. Because
you crybaby liberals are all alike. The system failed him. He's evil.
The system failed him. They had 15 years to help a 6-year-old.
And they gave him the proper diagnosis.
And he didn't. Hey, he had to want to be recovered from that evil, and he didn't.
He was sick.
He didn't work on his own. Yeah, but he had all that time. So the movie
zero steps.
He didn't do anything.
Dr. Phil could have done something.
Problem with you is you're evil. You got to take that evil and turn it around.
So, I mean, Jen, is there any kind of sympathy you have for Michael when he's getting stabbed in the eye and the knitting needle and the gut, and he's shot 6 times and he falls off of? I mean, that he was a kid. He was just a little child. He was a kid that the system failed him, right?
I don't know if the system failed. Dr. Loomis certainly failed him. I don't know if the system failed him. But I have 2 minds about Michael Myers. One is if toward the end, when I think about, who Michael Myers was as a kid, of course, I feel horrible. It's that, oh my God, I can't even imagine. And what happened in that sanitarium must have been just awful. But at the end of Halloween, I stopped thinking about Michael Myers as a person, and I begin to think about Michael Myers as an entity. And it is very difficult for me to have a ton of empathy for the entity of evil. Then it starts to feel like, in the same way that I'm probably not going to feel too empathetic for, a random demon or something. That's how I feel.
Okay, I'm trying to make this point, but Michael Myers, mind you, okay, if a 6-year-old goes into the system and you have 15 solid years to work with him, and all you get is a even crazier psychopath, that's the system.
Yeah, but we're not talking real life. We're talking about a movie. Because usually psychiatrists who proclaim that their patients are evil are probably not long for that career, because other psychiatrists kind of go, wait a minute, that diagnosis of evil you gave him, that's not going to really hold up. So we're going to get you can go over and do something a little lighter, and we'll take over from here. But as far as the movie goes, Michael, there is no Michael Myers. There might have been a Michael Myers before he was 6, but the night that he became the killer, that was it for him. He became possessed by whatever. It could be a possession. It could be something in his brain that shut off or whatever. But he ceased to be a person, and he became this other thing. And the fact is that, you couldn't kill him by knitting needle, knife, or gun. Basically says it wasn't the system that failed.
It was God. Clearly God
it was some
failed us.
sort of supernatural being that just happened to look like a little kid at one point.
I would love to have seen. They should have had like a footage of, I guess after 8 years into it, they never say his parents died, right? They never said that.
Well, the house has been sold, so they moved away, and that was that. Obviously,
I can understand why
they said that house had never been bought. And now, finally, after years of being dilapidated, now this one's a real hot item. They're going to sell it that way,
right? To some sick bastard. But
there's dead dogs in there. It's terrible.
But do they I wonder if his parents visited him. It's still their kid, right? So. Yeah. Maybe they visit him during it. Maybe they were the ones
or maybe they never got over the fact that, or maybe they're still standing on that front yard,
or maybe they taught him how
to tableau. They grew old and died there.
Maybe he got weekend passes.
I don't think so. You don't give people a pass.
They taught him how to drive there, and it was the daddy.
Oh, there you go. Dad taught him how to drive. It's like, Michael, I'm going to try to rehabilitate you. How about we work together, you and me, son? I'll teach you how to drive. Maybe that'll it's either that or catch. But I think driving, that's what'll bring you out and make you a good
Michael. I love it. All right, so let's go last words. We'll go to Josh. Anything last you want to say about the film? Joshua.
Should probably unmute the microphone to make this whole thing work.
Hilarious.
Halloween is a movie that has a very long-lasting legacy. Its effects have been felt through so many different genres of film and different types of entertainment. Like I said earlier, seeing Michael Myers sit up, after being presumed dead, Undertaker lifted that. So That's been one of his legacy moves for decades. Even when we were talking about The Good Doctor and his warnings, that falls right in line with every scientist in every disaster movie ever. I told you guys, but nobody ever listens. So this movie not only stands well on its own, and I should know because I've only seen 2, but I think the fact that we are about to have another one released, 30 years later?
40
years later. Sorry, my math isn't that great. 40 years later, we're getting another Halloween movie. Not only a Halloween movie, but a Halloween movie with Jamie Lee Curtis. I think
the last one that she was in, spoiler alert,
is a testament to, I guess, maybe not its quality, but certainly the loyalty of the fan base and how each generation seems to find a new group of Halloween fans.
You know what's so funny about that is there is a mock trailer called Halloween 6-0, and it's supposed to be 60 years later, and it is hilarious because it got Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode is like using the walker. Michael is he swings and because he's old now, he didn't drop the knife. And that scene that you see from the new one where he's in the closet,
spoiler. That's a terrible scene they show. That it's like that would be a genuine shock, and it's like, no, guess what? I saw it in this trailer. No need to be scared now.
But that scene they have it where old Michael is in there, and when they see him, he gets scared and he has like a heart attack. It's hilarious. So it's I'm gonna put it on the event page, but it's funny. It's Halloween 6-0. All right, so Jen, last Jen.
Okay, so first the first thing that I want to say is that you guys have covered the narrative stuff, so I'm not going to go into that. I am going to crush on how much I love Halloween for being a technical masterpiece. Well, maybe masterpiece is a little too huge, but I feel amazing when I see how, number one, the shots are lined up. 2, the editing in this film you just don't see this anymore. The transition shots are so different from the way that we normally now use transitions in almost any of our movies. And the other thing is the sound editing as it relates to the film editing is just so perfect. It's so on point. The single use of notes, there's never too much in this movie. It's always just the perfect balance of sound, of light, of composition on the screen, of the correct use of angles, of just understanding that what we're seeing on the screen has some purpose, as opposed to just kind of giving us some little bit of information. It feels like every shot has an actual purpose. So from a technical standpoint, both the director and the film editor and the sound editor and everybody else who participated on this film really deserves a lot of credit, because it's masterful. That I think is something that we sort of overlook, although we appreciate it when we talk about how much we like the movie. We sort of underappreciate what really went into it from the back of the house, if you will.
Right. Remember, 15 years later, the same cinematographer did Jurassic Park.
Oh, there we go. He also did The Thing, which, wow, I also could crush on.
A lot of Carpenter films.
All right, so
it's almost like they had a thing together. I mean, sorry.
Well, they did The Thing together, so.
All right, so last words for you, King.
You know what? This is one of my favorite horror films. Quote unquote horror films. I do say it's a suspense film. It's not a horror film per se. I have to say, the things that have come, it's weird because, like I said, the 70s had a lot of great horror films, And a lot, you had, like I said, you start. I think if you want to start technically, Rosemary's Baby, I think was, even though that's the '60s, late '60s, was the start. The Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Last House on the Left, The Omen, Burnt Offerings.
That is right.
Sorry, not that one, but. But you had these great chilling horror films. They were nihilistic and everything. And this film fell along the same category, but it touched enough things, and also was financially successful, which is in Hollywood is that's the holy grail anyway. But it was the one film that caused everything to try to imitate it, become a version of that. I mean, it dictated what horror films were going to be in the 80s. And yet everything's been a pale a copy of it. If you want to talk about jump scares, there's a couple of jump scares in this film. There are definitely, but they're done in a different way. They don't have like a screechy sound effect and to make someone pop out and everything. Like for example, when Sam Loomis is scaring the kids and the cop is right behind, turns around and bumps into the cop. I mean, it's only done once with the screechy sound effects when the kid runs into Michael at the, when the
great scene though, yeah.
Yeah, but it's done well enough that it's not the scare in itself, because it doesn't go, okay, now we can be relieved. Oh, thank goodness, because there's no relief from it, because it goes and follows Michael as he's following this kid, and so it keeps the suspense going, as opposed to being, okay, let's break the tension. And I hate that about modern horror films, where they have to have a jump scare and then suddenly everyone's laughing and everything else, and it takes you out of the whole experience, because now there's no tension, there's nothing. Now you had your tension, it got broken, we can laugh about it, and then we can sit there and wait for the next jump scare, which is that's all people think horror films are now, and it's terrible. This film was different. This one has a story. It's not a complicated story. It's not the most sophisticated story, but you follow it from beginning to end. It all makes sense. It all ties together, and it has a beginning, middle, and end that all makes sense and work. And throughout the whole thing, there's this tension building. You're seeing it building up to, like, the first half of the film is all building up to that last chase, really. And that's all it is, just this long, slow build up. And the audience is watching it, and they're feeling the tension, and they know something's going to happen, but when is it going to happen? And by the time that Michael is chasing Laurie out of the house, and she's banging on somebody's door trying to get help, and they turn on the lights and they turn it off, and
right.
she's she gets to the door and realizes she doesn't have the keys, and she's like he's just walking across the street, and she's trying to get through that door. I mean, you're building up to that moment, and it's great because it's just this slow build up, but it pays off so well.
It's relentless. It's relentless is what it is.
That's Josh, some woman screaming in terror on his front porch, and he looks, oh yeah, she's about to get killed, and turns it right off.
Yeah, in my neighborhood especially.
Like they turn on the light just to go, oh, and turn it back up. I
don't know who those guys were. It's like, she's screaming, just open the damn door, let her in.
But no, they were smart though, because they would end up dead. So,
maybe.
So, I'm gonna say this though, and then we'll say our goodbyes. Mm-hmm. I know the real reason why King Penguin loves this film.
Why is that?
And it's 100%. This is the real reason why he loves this film.
I'd like to know, because I don't even know.
Because he is a Star Trek fan. This movie is, you have Captain Kirk is a murderer going around killing people in this movie.
Right. That's true. You're right.
So I think when you see that Michael Myers mask, you see Captain Kirk.
I do. You know what? You're right. I think of it as the better version of Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
It came out the same year, huh?
It did. It came out the same year. So it's like one was slow and plodding and building up to something, and the other one was Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was just slow and plodding and didn't build up to anything.
That is so funny. Like, does William Shatner get any money for?
The funny thing is, the mask was based off of a mold of his face that was done for a horror movie called The Devil's Reign.
Oh yeah, I've seen
which
that.
was also John Travolta's very first film,
Right.
where he just played an extra getting melted by the devil's rain.
Right.
And so, yeah. So if you go and look, Devil's Rain, type it in, Google it, you'll probably see an image of Shatner standing there with kind of black eyes, like he's got no eyes. And that was from the mask that they made, which became used to make this mass-produced Captain Kirk mask that was out in the 70s.
Now, I've never seen him talk about it. Is he proud of the fact that Michael Myers is him?
I don't think he... look, it's Shatner, so anything that has to have the Shatner name on it, he's going to be proud of because it's all ego. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, you know what? I was the inspiration for Halloween, and the entire movie was based on me.
I don't feel like that's wrong, actually.
I didn't see a cent of that money coming to me, so I think I'm owed something.
But everybody on the film afterwards used Priceline to so he got that.
And they never got the mask right after that film.
Yeah, that's so strange because they said that the original mask, somebody they let I think Nick Castle take it home or something.
Well, it wouldn't have lasted anyway. I mean, it's latex rubber; it would have dissolved within like a couple of years, as it was. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to keep a latex mask for any length of time. It disintegrates and turns into this kind of like nasty, sticky goo.
You know that the other mask that they thought about doing was that the clown the clown hobo mask.
Oh yeah,
that one, and then Leonard Nimoy mask. They had they considered Leonard Nimoy, and they said,
you know what, that mask really works. I mean, because when they spray painted it white, right, it had this weird kind of ghostly look to it. It didn't look like, I mean, it's only when you pointed out, oh, that's a William Shatner mask from, whatever, it's a Captain Kirk mask or whatever, you see it then. But until you are told, it's just this blank mask that has some weird character to it, and I think it's effective.
Yeah, there it is. Devil.
See, there it is.
Oh.
And so that is the mold that they used for this. That became the Captain Kirk mask, which then they painted white to become Michael Myers mask.
One of the people that I follow on Twitter had a picture of all of the Halloweens and what Jason looked like, basically all the Jason masks, the Michael Myers masks. Yes. And I noted that first he starts out as William Shatner, but someplace around after 2, he basically becomes Data. So it is a very odd progression.
So there's a very, and if you think about it, what was the Curse of Michael Myers? I think came out at the same time that Next Generation did. So there you go. Yeah. They're tied together. Started with the motion picture, and then went on.
Hilarious! I want to thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to start off with you, Josh. How can people get you on social media? And tell us about your podcast, man.
Well, first of all, people can always reach me on Twitter at SemicoreJosh. That's really the only social media thingy that I do on a regular-ish basis. So it's at SemicoreJosh. Or you can go to our wrestling podcast Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/BS podcast. Because do you like wrestling, brother?
Oh, yeah.
Because every week we're here to give you the latest and greatest on wrestling news and events. And I'm not just talking WWE, brother. I'm talking New Japan, Ring of Honor, and even Impact. So just join us with lust in your eyes and listen every weekend to the Backstage Slam. Ooh, yeah.
That's right. You know what? I think he was just diagnosed evil with that one. All right.
That's a pure sign of evil there, that voice.
All right. So King Penguin, how can we get you in social media?
Well, you can always email me at kingpenguin@gmail.com. I am also working on a project, which will be coming out probably after Halloween because it's a lot of stuff we're working on. It's going to be called Professor Psycho's movie Madhouse. It's going to be coming on YouTube. Basically, it's going to be something similar to the old style horror host shows. We're going to be showing stuff that is obviously going to be public domain, and we're doing a few little twists on the stuff. So I will announce that coming out soon, and there will be a Twitter as well for that. So, stay tuned, and we'll announce it, and you'll find it on my channel, B Movie Studios on YouTube.
All right. I love it. All right. So, Jen, how can people get you in social media and tell us about your websites?
You can grab me on social media at Following Bliss 1. That's on Twitter. And just so that you know, Movies Make the Meal, it'll start on the 20th of this month. I've got 11 days of Halloween to celebrate, and each one of the 11 days highlights a different movie. I start off with one of the original Frankenstein, but Halloween is in here. So there is a movie-inspired recipe for Halloween. There's also some for some more recent franchises and some pretty old ones. So take a look. It's at moviesmakethemeal.com. I hope you guys enjoy it. And you can also find me at my review website, criticallaughswith2Ls.com.
You totally messed up with the Movies That Make the Meal. I mean, you could have had a dog recipe tonight.
I decided not to go there. Yeah.
It's a Korean recipe. It's delicious.
Look, I want viewers to come to the site. I don't want to turn people off. So, yeah.
All right, you can give me a Kente F on Twitter. You can go to our website, indyradio.org. That's indyradio.org. This Sunday, we'll be reviewing the newest episode of The Walking Dead. Monday, Mars Venus. And next week, we will be talking Mayans MC, as well as a new Spotlight episode. We'll be chatting with writer, director, actor Dustin Ferguson, not related to me, who's, I believe his birthday was yesterday. So happy birthday, Dustin, our next guest on the show. So with all that said, you guys have a great week. God bless. And we'll see you next time right here on indyradio.org. Peace.